This is the beginning of the 5th video in the series of how to design a cycle cart, and since the last video, all that's been on my brain has been this front axle for this BMW Roadster cycle cart. My good buddy Bob Miller turned me on to this website right here. Big print program at http://woodgears.ca. Anyway, it's a program. I bought the program. It's $22, and it allows you to take a photograph of something and then print it in whatever scale you want on multiple pages. So I had to mess around with it a while, but this is a nice drawing here, but in 3" to the foot. So I took a photograph of that, and once I was in the program, I could tell it how wide I wanted it from this point here to this point here, which I wanted 31 inches, and darn if it didn't print out the pages and give me a full-size front axle in elevation. Man, this is cool. So I had to do some figuring. So if I had an axle width of 31, which this is, spindles are 2 inches wide each, so that's 4 inches. Then from the end of the spindle to the center of the tire is 1.5 each side. So that gives it a center of tire to center of tire of 38 inches, which is what I want. So, man, I'm pretty pumped about this. I've also decided a couple of things. If I can pull it off. I have to ask one person, but I'm going to make this out of 1.25 by 1.25 steel plate. Yeah, you know, we're talking that thick steel plate. But I can buy a piece of plate that is about 9 inches by 33, let's say. It'd be heavier than hell, 1.25 inches thick. And then I take it over to the guy who has a water jet. And I'm almost sure the water jet will cut through a 1.25 steel. I have to double check. But then I'll have this shape cut out. I'll have a full-size pattern for him. Hopefully he can scan it, or maybe I can give him the digital program, the file. So he'll cut it out 1.25 this way. And it's already 1.25 thick. He'll cut it 1.25 this way, and it's already 1.25 thick. So I'll have a square, solid bar for a front axle. Now, the only thing I might be a little concerned with is I hope it's not too heavy, but I believe it'll be stout enough. And it'll be true to shape and true to scale. And that'll give me a good starting point to figure out how to install it mounted on the cart. More importantly, when I draw this thing full size, I can use this to draw it out full size. So what I plan to do is I'll take this drawing and I'll carefully cut it out and then trace it onto, I've got some poster board. So that'll be like a cardboard template. And there'll be 2 halves split in the middle. Then I can fold it over. I'll do this when it's paper. I'll fold it over so that both ends ultimately are exactly the same. They're a little bit different because this is off of this, which is really my hand drawing. So I'm pretty pumped, and this was a big part of the design. So I think I'm on to something here. Okay, I can hardly contain my excitement over this program because when I finish detailing this and I have the shape I want, I can photograph this and print out a bunch of pages that I tape together, and it'll give me a full-size exact replica of what I've drawn, which I can use to transfer to the full-size layout. So that's pretty cool. So I have to think of what else I can use it for. But man, that was the best $22 I think I've ever spent. A nice thing about this system is because this was a scale drawing, this full-size rendering is to scale. So I scaled this drawing here at 1.25 inches, 3 inches to the foot. So now in full size, darn if it isn't 1.25 right on the money. And the only reason these lines aren't crisp is because they're pencil drawings, you know. So when I go, I'm getting ready to cut this thing out so I can trace the edges of the cut onto the poster board. So I'll have to be accurate there. So I'm learning, you know, it's my first one. So if I could draw this nice and crisp, then these lines wouldn't be so washed out like they are. But, you know, it's pretty darn good. So, and another thing I can do is I can make this cut right here. That's 90 degrees. I can tilt it over for 3 degrees positive, so that my pattern will have 3 degrees already in it for both sides. It'll have the 3 degrees, and then when we weld on the spindle bracket, which goes right here, it'll have an automatic 3 degrees positive. And the reason I do 3 degrees positive is because the cars of the era, thin tires, high crown roads, they all had a lot of positive. You know, modern day cars are negative, you know, so, but it looks good for the era, and they still handled it fine. So anyway, I'm pretty excited about that. Now I'm working on refining the pattern. So I made a couple of these little full-size mock-ups here. So I want the center line of the axle to be on at the 11-inch mark, which this would be. So I cleaned up this top edge, so that's nice and straight. So 5/8 down is the center of the 1 1/4. So I'm going to put the spindle there, and you can see it. I've cut the 3 degrees, and that spindle is pointing downhill. You know, that's got some positive now, positive camber. So get that on the mark. Alright, so my thinking is I could do anything with this shape I want, so I think I'll run this up until it meets the top of this, and maybe make this meet too, so that I'll get a full weld. I could fill that with weld there, that'd be alright, but it'd be nice to take this up. See, these sides are different. I have to draw one just the way I want, then fold this over and get the other shape symmetric. So I'm going to tape some other paper here and run this up to there. So that's the thinking. Yep. That might turn out okay. Alright. So it's coming along here. I've been trimming it and trying to get the two ends to be the same. So I reshaped, I redrew this line, and I played with this line. And so that'll make for a nice weld. And then I folded it over, and this other side is in essence the same thing. I reworked this line and this line. And I figured there'd be some stress here, so this is a little bit thicker. And these are at 3 degrees, so that's working out. I still have to trim this in through here. Try to find an accurate way of doing it. You know, being that this was my first full-size pattern that I made, I've learned that if I did it a little bit different, I'd have some reference lines, so it would be more accurate. This is just ever so slightly off. And I've been trying to make it work, and you know, you can't see that it's off, but it's just a little bit, you know, bugs me. So I might do another version tomorrow and call this one a practice session. It just depends on once I get it cut out, if it measures up and is nice and true. I'd hate it to be a little bit off on one side. So I'm encouraged that this might be a pretty nice axle and a nice stout welded connection here. So as long as this doesn't bend under stress, which I don't think it will, then we'll be in good shape. Alright, I'll keep working on it. Well, I finished cutting out the first pattern that I made, and I mean, it doesn't look too bad. I think it would work, but Since I don't know the program that well, I wanted to do another one. So I took this drawing and I blew it up to a larger scale. I think it's 6 inches to the foot. Then I folded this over, and both sides are now identical. So this is as close as I can get it. So then I traced that onto this piece of paper, which I'm going to take a photograph of and use to create the new pattern. I also included reference lines, the top of the axle and these 3-degree angle cuts, so that they'll be part of it right from the beginning. So now I'm going to put it on, take a photo and put it on the computer and see if I can make a little bit better one. And the whole idea here is to have a nice paper version that I can put onto the poster board. That'll be the pattern for the steel cutter or whatever I want to do. I can use the pattern for the full-size drawing, and so let's see how this one comes out. Okay, I made a new pattern, and this one is a lot cleaner, a lot more consistent, and I'm going to use this to transfer it onto the poster board. There's my other version. This new version doesn't have, see the shape here, doesn't have this extended piece, but I might put it on there. I could always add a gusset here after the fact, after this was welded, but if that's done right, that should be strong enough. So I'm getting closer to having a decent pattern on the poster board that I can use for various chores. Okay, I finished making a pattern out of poster board, and I was able to get it out of one piece. So now I've got a nice marking template that I can use for my full-size layout. If I had this shape made, then there's a pattern. I have the 3 degrees in, so that's looking pretty good, and it measures up to the length I want. Now I spent a fair amount of time on this front axle, but you know, when you get right down to it, these are Cyclekarts, and you don't have to do all this work. You could just put a straight axle on it, or the simple curved version. You could do leaf springs, you know, so one on each side. So you don't have to go to the trouble of, you know, really making it look exactly like the real car. You know, keep in mind they're Cyclekarts and they're for fun, and if it's your first kart, keep it simple. You know, this is my third one, so I'm trying to get a little more creative here and come up with some neat ideas, things that'll work right, look close to the real car, and you know, but this whole idea might get scrapped. You know, I'm still designing. So this was an exercise to see what this might look like, and but it's still not the exact version I'm going to use. So we'll just keep plugging away, and we'll make those decisions at the end. All right. While I'm in the process of building Cyclekarts, I'm always in touch with the other builders that I know, and we're always exchanging ideas and talking about things. And so I was talking to Bob Miller about this front axle, and you know, my concept of maybe having it water jet cut out of a piece of plate steel. And he thought, like I did, that it might be a little on the heavy side to do that. What he suggested was maybe I have this shape created by a blacksmith out of some heavy wall C channel or maybe an I channel, so it'd be hand forged. Now that would look like a real axle. And then, you know, he'd have to heat it and shape it as close as he could get to what I would want. So that's a viable option, because he could also make me a spring, a leaf spring setup that was exactly the size, width, length, everything that I wanted. So, and then, you know, we've talked extensively about doing it out of round tube. You know, there's some advantages there. if we do it out of round tube, then we're making it more like a Cyclekart instead of like the real car, which is fine. Both my carts are, they have the illusion of being like a real car, but they're a Cyclekart through and through, and all the underpinnings and components are designed to work as a Cyclekart, not like the full car. So just keep that in mind. Okay. I'm set up now to do a full-size front view of the car using my new axle and spindle templates here. So this will be fun to see how it all turns out. Okay. I wanted to show you I've made a little bit of progress here. The lines are pretty light, but I think you'll be able to see them. So this is the beginning of a full-size layout. So I've got a lot more work to do, but I'm kind of excited about how this axle thing turned out. So here's the 22-inch tire and wheel, and then it's 38 center line to center line. And look how this thing lines up. Here's the 11-inch mark off the ground, center of the rim. And then you can clearly see the 3 degrees. And the idea was that would line up with the edge of the tire, which it does. And darn if it isn't looking pretty good. I mean, it fits in there beautifully. I've got 5 1/4 here. I was looking for 5 1/2 or 6, but this is actually a little bit thicker than 1 1/4, so that's part of the measurement. But that'll work. What's really cool is that I photographed this small little piece of paper here, and that's how I created this whole pattern. And that's with that big print program that I bought the program for $22. So out of that little piece of paper, and you can see it in scale, came this whole setup. Now I got to thinking, I can photograph the spring on edge and make a pattern of that. So I have this exact size of the spring in here. I can make it longer if I want and have it custom made. So, I enjoy this because it's fun. But I was pleasantly surprised when I laid my template in there and all of the measurements added up. So this all comes from smaller scaled drawings. All right. This is nice. Continuing on. So as I'm drawing this full-size layout, I came up with 3 other ways I could use this big print program to get some body lines and component features. So I took a photograph of this. It was an experiment to see what would happen. And then I put them on my computer. And, the resolution isn't very good, but there's enough of it there that I can see the line that I'm after. So this is 12 inches here, and that's the exact curve of the radiator. So I can use that as a pattern to trace the top of the radiator and then the size of the ornament. So, and then I took a photograph of the spring. I just laid it on the ground, actually, and pointed the camera down at it. And told it how wide I wanted it, 22 1/2 from the center of the hole. And boom, there it was. I still have to tape it together and trim it. But I'll make a little cardboard pattern with that, and I can use to trace it in. And if I got a spring made, that would be the pattern. And then I also needed the line of the cowl right here. You can see it. Let's see. The image isn't very good. It's even worse on this side, but I only need half of it. So I'm going to cut out half and then fold it over, and I'll cut the other side. And I'm making that 26 inches. That's what I decided on the body with, from line to line. And that will be drawn on this full-size layout here of the front of the cart. Since the last video, I drew in the spindles with the 3 degrees positive. And the axle got it drawn in. So it's coming along. I started doing lines on the radiator and the height of the body, and that's when I realized, oh, I can use the big print program, and you know, I'm getting some value out of my 22 bucks, that's for sure. Alright, so I'm going to cut these up and use them to trace some full-size shapes here. I'm having some fun here. So I've done some cutting out of the patterns here. So I haven't made them, I haven't transferred them onto poster board yet. They're still paper. But I'm gonna transfer them because they're patterns for maybe a future new spring, or let's say the wood, I make a wood bulkhead out of ash or something before I put on the outside skin, so that's an actual pattern. This back one here, that's the shape of the cowl. Let's see here if I show you this. Okay, so this line right here is this line up here. So I haven't drawn the lines yet, but I wanted 26 body, and that's what it came out to be, and I wanted a 12-inch. This one came out 12 1/4, 12 1/2, which is okay. And they're both on the center line, and so they're to scale. So that top line is this line, and then the radiator line is this line. No more guessing. These came right off of drawings, or photographs actually. So I think I've got that looking pretty good. So now I can you know, slide this around, get it centered up. See, there's a center mark here, so if I get it on the center line and get it equal from here to here, then I know it's good enough for me to draw the shackles. So yeah, this is fun. I'm enjoying this. So next I'm going to make the poster board patterns. Then I'm going to trace them onto this drawing, keep working on this until it's a deluxe full-size layout. Okay. Through the magic of video, I now have patterns made out of poster board. So they turned out pretty good. Didn't take me too long to make. So I'm going to continue on drawing this body, the front of the body, and all its components. I've been working on this front view, and I think I've got it pretty much done for now. I had to make some definitive decisions because I think this is my final version of the front. So I made some choices. But it's looking pretty good, and it's full size, you know, so that wheel there is 22 inches. And there's a 3/4 axle, and then the spindle. And then here's the radiused axle. I drew in the tie rods. That's right where they'll come across. I used that pattern I made for the spring, so I'm pretty happy with that. And then I went with about 1 inch right here, and then this is a little bar across here, I guess, as a stop. So I think that's the size I'm going with the spring shackles. I drew in the pannered rod here. And one change I made was, well, this is the bottom of the frame, the 2-inch part right here. This is open here. But that's 2 inches. And then I had a straight plate here to mount the pannered rod. But instead, I'm just going to make it the same shape as the axle. I think that'll look good. But the pannered rods, you know, this side attaches to the steel plate that I'll weld to the bottom of the frame. And then this side's attached to the center of the axle. So that'll keep it from moving side to side. Here's the vertical 1x1 frame rails, and then this is a 1x3 rectangle tube that carries the spring perch and the block. So that's not too bad. I'm happy with the way that turned out. And then as you move up to here, I used those patterns to create this radiator shape, so I believe that is true to the shape. I didn't have to wing it. And then I also used the pattern to get this cowl shape up here, so I don't have to wing that. think I need to soften these corners a little bit more. But see, later when I make the cowl support, that'll be the shape of it. I might make that out of wood, maybe a nice piece of ash or something. I had to refer to my side view a couple of times. So to get a couple of measurements when I was working on this and working on this. So I did a little bit of work on the side view. Let's see if you can see it here. The main thing I did was I put in the steering shaft, because see, I had to determine where the spindle was out at the wheel, the spindle bracket, the attachment point for the tie rod. This is where it is, right here, at that height and in relation to the frame. So this will probably be a plate, maybe, that comes up over and attaches here somehow. But there's a steering shaft coming through, and then the heim joints that attach to the tie rods will be right in this area. So I'm pretty close. You know, I can finesse this a little bit later, but it got me close. Height of tie rod at spindle. And then that's the location with respect to the frame. So then I drew the shaft going up, put a little steering wheel on it. I got the line of the body here, and you know, here's the joint right here. Right in here is where this shroud, radiator shroud, will come off, exposing the whole front end for service. But later, this shape right here, there's a side view I have, I'll photograph, and I'll make a pattern of that, and that'll help me determine this angle of the steering wheel. The angle of that wheel is kind of driven by the angle of the shaft, and that shaft, that angle is pretty much driven by the height at the cowl and where your location point is. So you kind of sneak up on that one. So yeah, I'm real happy with this. Alright, well, there's the finished elevation of the front of the car. And I thought I was done with it, but I added a little bit more detail for the fun of it, because I enjoy it. So I'll show you what we got here. The tire size, axle, 3 degrees positive, 17-inch CT90 rim, aluminum body. There's the tie rod. There's the side of the frame, the panhard rod, the front of the frame, 1x2 rectangle tube, 0.62 wall thickness, the 3/16 steel plate that carries the panhard rod. There's the radius rod location. I have to work that out later. Hard to show in this view. Probably going to go with a square tube front axle. I'm still waffling. There's a spring shackle, make that out of 3/16 steel. Spindle bracket, leaf spring, rubber block, and 1/4 inch steel on the spring perch. I want to make that nice and stout. Then here's the hood ornament. And then I'll put in some 1/4 inch plexiglass in the window frame. So that has a pretty nice appearance. I'm pleased with that. Right at the top of the radiator is 28 inches off the ground, and then I'm shooting for 30 inches at the cowl, so it'll be a slight upsweep. So I'm done with this one, and I have to finish. I forgot I had this done. My mind's racing. But I have a lot more to add to this. This is my practice top view front of the cart. I'm going to work out a few things before I do the full size layout. So I'm getting there. So this will end the, this is the last of the 5th video, end of the 5th video. So we'll be getting into some more drawings, layouts like this in the next installment. Okay.